Virginia may be for lovers, but apparently it's also for drones. Well, that's according to Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell. He says that drones are so successful at their missions overseas that he wants them for domestic police operations in his state. Obama's made drone warfare his main foreign policy strategy, and many say that drones do a great job at targeting and eliminating those they consider terrorists. But are they really as successful in eliminating terrorism as they say? And what is going to happen when they're implemented by police forces here at home? To answer that and more, I'm joined by John Glaser, assistant editor for antiwar.com. John, do you think that drones are as successful as they say they are?
Well, they're successful in killing a lot of people. They're not successful in terms of strategy. I mean, for years now, throughout the Barack Obama drone war years, particularly in Pakistan, but also in Yemen, there have been a few small voices doing real journalism, exposing the drone war as killing hundreds and hundreds of civilians, despite the administration's claims that drones enable them to hit with precision, very specific targets. And what we learned, of course, in the New York Times, or what that article reiterated yesterday, was that there's a very specific reason the Obama administration has been able to claim, absurdly, that little to no civilian casualties have resulted from the drone war. And that's because of the way they've chosen to count civilians. What they've said is that any and all military-age people that happen to be present when we drop a missile in Pakistan or Yemen is automatically defined as a combatant, which is another way of saying if we happen to kill you, you are by definition a militant and deserve to die.
Guilty until proven innocence without a shadow of a doubt, which is hard once they're already dead. I wanted to talk to you about, what do you think the chilling effect will be once bringing this drone warfare here at home? Now corporations, schools can have drones. I mean, it just seems like there's going to be an endless supply of people using these drones. What do you think that's going to do to the American psyche?
Well, look, Americans typically don't start to put pressure on their government until their government starts to oppress them. Of course, when the drones have been killing Yemenis and Pakistanis for so long and spying on Iranians and doing all of this stuff around the world, it hasn't hit quite home yet to a lot of Americans. But of course, when it does start to come home, and it is, I mean, police networks all over the country, as you said, are becoming very intricately entwined with the drone technology. And what we have to understand, of course, is that we're at the beginning of this. 5, 10, 20 years down the line, they're going to be much more technologically savvy. They're going to be able to fly through your window, find you in this kind of thing. So unless Americans want a big government, they're going to start taking control and start voicing some opposition to this flagrant, lawless abuse of Americans' privacy and, of course, what they've been doing abroad.
But John, don't you think that, I mean, it's almost normalized? It seemed like there was such an anti-Bush fervor against the wars, against torture, against all these policies, and then with Obama's continuation and in some cases exacerbation of these policies, it almost seems like there is just kind of a sense of normalization and acceptance of them. Do you disagree?
No, so far that's exactly right. There's two, actually. To be fair, there's two things. First of all, there's normalization and acceptance that drones are a reality of today, and we give deference to the president to do what he wants with them. And then there's the other category of people that just don't know because they don't care enough to pay attention. They'd rather watch American Idol and get fat on their couches as opposed to actually learn about what their government is doing. I mean, it's really an extreme form of executive overreach, and one of the reasons nobody in the mainstream is talking about it is because the only political opposition Obama's Democratic Party has are the Republicans, who wholeheartedly agree with these policies.
It is interesting that it's kind of two areas of the spectrum. One is, I'm fighting war the smarter way. There's really no alternative. It's just, you're fighting war with drones, so it's more precise and a better way to fight war, I guess you could say. I wanted to get your opinion, though, on just the fact that a Nobel Peace Prize winner has an assassination list that he's overseen that includes multiple U.S. citizens and teenage girls.
It's absurd, isn't it? Not only does, yeah, it includes U.S. citizens, it includes a teenager, 16-year-old Al-Awlaqi's son, who was killed and who the Obama administration won't even admit that they killed him. The only time they've referenced him is to say he was collateral damage for another target. It is absurd that this man is a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and he has hundreds and hundreds of innocent lives under his belt that he won't even admit to, without any trial, without any due process, without having to go through the trouble of getting a UN resolution or a declaration of war, or telling the American people, or getting extradition and prosecution. These are people that the Obama administration alleges are legitimate targets, although they refuse to give any evidence. So, yeah, this is just, it's really a very radical departure from the so-called rule of law that liberals are supposed to love and adhere to.
John, what do you think about, Glenn Greenwald was asked the other day just about, well, what is the president supposed to do when there are terrorists abroad and when we do need to deal with them? And he just said, I'd look at myself and say, stop stabbing yourself when you're covered in blood, and then you realize that it's coming from you continuously stabbing yourself, and comparing that to how when you continue to drop bombs on the Middle East, it just perpetuates more terrorism and more angst toward the U.S. So what should we do? I mean, do you even believe that there's a threat at all? And if so, how would you suggest that we deal with it without engaging in this warfare?
There is a threat. There are people, parts of certain groups that want to kill Americans. The way that you, first of all, the way that you reduce the amount of terrorism in the world, first of all, is to stop participating in it. Stop doing it yourself. Stop being a terrorist by bombing civilians in non-war zones, which is typically called terrorism. The other way you do it is stop creating more terrorism. Stop giving terrorist recruitment efforts, an A+ and a pat on the back. The number one thing that is creating all this anti-American hatred and Islamic terrorism is support for brutal governments like the government in Yemen.
John, I'm so sorry to cut you short. We're almost out of time. Thanks so much for coming on. That was John Glaser, assistant editor of antiwar.com.